Mimetic theory is the idea that humans desire what their neighbor desires, that the desires that they have don't actually come from their own heart, but are rather caught. They're caught like a bug, like sniffles. You don't choose what you want to desire. Your neighbors around you are pre kind of selecting what you are going to be drawn towards based on how you want to be like your neighbors. This is
Like
the
herd
idea
mentality, likes on Facebook, hearts on Instagram. This idea that if people are nodding their heads around us, then we're doing the right thing.
Right. That's one of the reasons why censorship is such an investment for the establishment, right? They've got to censor to make you look like there's not a lot of people looking or listening or viewing you, so that they know what incites desire in human beings. That human being, if I wanted to open up a store, at the mall, you could pay a rent-a-crowd to line up ahead of time before my clothing design, and it could be the most garbage clothing in the world, as we see of most fashion, right? But if you can incite a mimetic desire by putting that rent-a-crowd there, I mean, you can do that yourself. You can rent-a-crowd Twitter likes. You go to if you wanted to be an up-and-coming social media influencer, you could go to a podcast convention and rent a crowd, have 50 attractive young people coming out screaming your name and wanting to get your photo, and you pay them an hour, or you pay them a little event fee gig. And then you've created a ripple effect, because others are going to look at that and take photos, and who's this person, and it's going to start creating a snowball effect, and the next thing you know, you're off to the races in terms of worldly prestige, right? So that's tapping into something that only the Bible truly unveils in human history, right? Which is all we like sheep have gone astray, each into our own way. That means more than what we generally think. You think you're going your own way, and that's how you know that you're a sheep, right? In other words, you can't fully become a human person until you realize how sheep-like the human species is. We are socially mediated creatures. We are interdividuals, not individuals. We are shaped by the desires, our parents, our siblings, our rivals at school, the books we read, Mr. Rogers, whatever it is. These things are all throwing models of things that you should desire, things that you should value, and we are kind of like a sponge, absorbing them all in, and some of them we're pushing back against, and some of them we're letting in, and some of them we're unconsciously modeling, and some of them we're consciously saying, I want to be like so-and-so, or I want to be like this or that. All of that amalgamation of role models, in other words, is what makes up your sense of self. Your self is really just a collection of role models that you've seen modeled throughout your life, that you've kind of amalgamated into a cohesive narrative for your rational brain to process. This is me in distinction from thee, right? And so yourself is really socially constructed. The left is right on that on some level. They don't take it the right way. They don't ground it in logos like I'm doing, as dependent on the revelation of Jesus. So they go off into insane ways with that. But that's what's really going on. So the Bible is trying to get us to, in order to find true personhood. That's why I talk about the personhood revolution of Jesus. In order to find your true personal creative potential, you must first accept that you and everything you think you are is mostly unconsciously taken from those around you, including those that annoy you the most, which is the hardest thing people have to do, is to recognize how much alike they are to their rivals. Hence, we have the Republican and Democrat Party, of course.
Right. And it's a humbling thing, right? I mean, like, what you see Satan do is in the garden, right? Is he's saying you're gonna, by making this decision, you're individuating, or by telling Eve you're now making a decision based on your desires.
Yeah, so Satan models God the Father from a rivalrous perspective. Right. So important. You only have two choices in life. You're going to rival God in a rival. You're going to imitate God in rivalry, or you're going to imitate God in love. That's it. That's your only choice. You will imitate, and you will imitate all kinds of little gurus along the way. But they're either going to point you towards God, which is love and self-giving and self-emptying of the illusion of yourself and all of the death anxiety that comes along with that, or you're going to follow Christ. You're going to embrace the cross, realize that death has been conquered, that your creative potential has been unleashed, and that you should not be so stupid into buying into textbook knowledge like what is the proper way to cure diabetes or cancer. When you take that see, Christianity is the end of religion, my friends. It's the end of it.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins and those fools are the biggest religious clowns you could ever imagine.
Yep.
They read the textbooks and they don't see any suspicion there. They read a text, oh, this is all the experts tell you to do COVID, and they're just stupidly, religiously paralyzed into dumb, stupefying submission. They don't even have the ability because they're so drunk on their false sense of self, it's rugged self-determinism, which ends up in many cases being the biggest occasion for being a mindless sheep. That's why the Bible says, all we like sheep have gone astray, each into our own way. You as a sheep, when you don't recognize your sheepness, your mimetic desire construct of who you are, when you don't wake up to that matrix, that's the matrix. And that's the matrix Andrew Tate doesn't want to take. He's still caught in the matrix.
Yeah.
He thinks that he's a self-made man. In reality, he's just created another fantasy coping mechanism for the trauma of his childhood and what he experienced, which is what we all do to various degrees. And so I'm not chastising him, but the point is he's still a puppet of the matrix. Yep. The matrix gets you enslaved to your passions, enslaved to the self and to the romantic notion that if I could just get that car, if I could just get that many YouTube subscribers, if I could just get that house, if I could just get that family, if I could just get my kids into that school, it's just never ending. It never stops. That's called hell on earth.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Lewis, and by the way, and so all of this comes back to, human beings were supposed to have this stuff bound up, right? Because the ancients had a kind of wisdom. There's always some kind of inbreaking of God's, natural law, whatever you want to call it. And in even the most ugly, disgusting, backwards pagan societies. But they understood that unleashing human desire without having it kind of channeled into a sense of differentiation was a very dangerous thing. Because if we are imitative creatures, we go back to the same model. A lot of folks who like mimetic theory will use the model of two toddlers in a preschool playroom, and one picks up the doll. There's a whole bunch of toys, and let's say there's a Mickey doll. They pick up the Mickey Mouse stuffed animal. Now the other toddler immediately wants to play with it. They didn't want to play with it before their neighbor modeled the desire for them, right?
It's like eating dinner with your wife, dude. She's going to want to eat your food.
Yeah, or exactly. And so what happens is so now the first child didn't care about the toy. They were just kind of lackadaisical. They pick up something or whatever. Now the other kid wants it. But as the other kid grabs for it, that makes him model his desire after the rival. So he says, no, I want it more now. I didn't care about it, but now that you're trying to grab for it, it incites my desire. It inflames my desire. And now they're going to be stuck in a rivalry where they're fighting. And I always say, well, the only way you can, maybe distract them from that is to come to a common enemy or something else to fascinate them. Maybe a puppy comes in and they start tormenting his ears and stuff like that, which is kind of like a proto scapegoat effect, right? You're fighting over the same scarce resources. You're fighting over the same desires. You don't know why. You just catch a desire and you're pushing and pulling and towards against each other. I want it. No, I want it. No, I want it. No, I want it. And then the only thing that breaks up that sameness is something that is irresistibly considered to be an other. In this case, a puppy walks in. Well, that's pretty distinct from, each other in our relationship to this object of desire. Actually, the object of desire eventually becomes kind of irrelevant at some point. As the rivalry continues, it's like at high school, they fight over a girl. But eventually the girl kind of becomes immaterial at some point, and they're just obsessed with beating the other. I'm going to beat you at the game. I'm going to beat you for homecoming king, or I'm going to beat you in whatever, friends at my party compared to friends at your party. It becomes an obsession with actually their rival more so than it does the actual object that originally incited that desire.